This is Printrbot Live, Brick Drum with Printrbot. And I want to tell you a quick story. So I had a teacher just drop by, and he brought by 5 printers. There's 4, they're over there on the floor. 4 simple metals and a plus. And if you're a teacher, does this sound like your world? So I said, oh, you're going to bring some by for fixing? He said, yeah. I'm new, so you know, this all is on the class before me, but yeah. So I said, hey, let me help you get him out of the truck. So I went out to his truck, and he opened he had one of those back door things, and he opened it up, and there was a pile of printers there. I mean, they weren't in a box. They were every which way. In fact, to get them out, he had cords everywhere. So he was yanking, and cords were pulling other things out of the truck. It's raining outside. So anyway, I was like, wow, dude, no wonder they're broke. You're throwing them in the back of your truck. But anyway, so we got them inside, and yeah, we're going to go through them and give them a little quote on what it would take to fix. But just looking at them, I mean, they're dusty. And he goes, yeah, they've just been shoved in a closet at the back of the closet, and I found them. And so I was like, wow. Okay, were the kids pretty hard on them? He goes, yeah, obviously very hard on them. There was a couple of them that were working, but he's using matter control to control one of them, and he said, I think we broke the USB, and so you got to hold it just right. Anyway, but I'm here now, so welcome, and we're going to talk about the CNC because while I would have liked to have it done today, I wasn't done. So went through the design with Mark, the junior engineer is what I call him, even though there's no senior engineer here, it's me. But so anyway, we went through the design today, and we did the BOM as best we could. And it came in just a little higher than I was wanting. So I decided to make a couple of changes, and so we did that. And we're down to a price that I'm pretty happy with, but here's how we're going to launch. We want to go with this aimed directly at people that build machines or have built a machine before. So if you built a 3D printer before, and you've been eyeing CNCs or thinking about getting into CNCs, I think this is a good design for you. So we're going to try to get the Bare Bones Beta. And so let me explain what the Bare Bones Beta will be. Well, first of all, it'll be the lowest price you'll ever be able to get into this kit. And here's why. I'm going to leave several choices to this Beta kit. For the people that buy this beta kit, I'm going to leave several choices to you. And that's going to actually include more than I expected until just today thinking through it. And I'll explain it. So one of the things that, as I've looked at my competition, the electronics that are used to run these CNCs, they're all over the map. There's Gerbil on various products. You can run Gerbil on a printer board. So you could choose to order, like say, an older board, a Rev D. I know that there is a precompiled Gerbil available for Rev D. Way back in the day, it's an older version of Gerbil, but so theoretically you could use a printer board. But some people want the electronics that they're most familiar with. So I don't want to just shove the G2 down your throat or the printer board down your throat. I'm going to let you decide on electronics. There was even a guy in the Twitter stream that I saw that said, hey, look at this. And it was like $200, and it ran his CNC, and it was a Chinese deal. But it looked kind of Mach 3-ish, you know, like there's a big, what looked like a parallel port on the front, and so there was some electronics there was this big connector that reminded me of older electronics. But I don't want to sell you something that you're going to then throw away. So the electronics are going to be totally up to you. Well, if the electronics are going to be up to you, I'm not going to include the things that are kind of a preference. And so those include not just the wiring, but the E-chain, the micro switch. Like on this one, to run with the G2 board, I have a sensor here set up to use the Z sensor on the G2 printer board. You don't need that. We'll put holes for a limit switch, or you can even drill your own. So anyway, anything that has to do with electronics or wiring, I'm not going to include in this beta Bare Bones. So when we get that live, understand that there's no wiring. You'll have to do that yourself. But guys, I'm trying to narrow the audience to people that are comfortable with a soldering iron. And they can get their own wire and wire up their own wire. So that means that you can choose your own NEMA 23s as well. Those are widely available on Amazon. Now, I don't have a ton of them in stock here anyway, so it'd be a wait time to do that. So to eliminate the wait time and let you make your own choices on wiring, and remember, when I charge for, like if a stepper motor costs me $25, my markup is typically 40, 50%. And so while I might order in bulk and get them cheap, I got to mark them up. So you're actually going to save some money by sourcing your own wiring and the motors. Okay. So when I talk about Bare Bones Beta, we're talking about the plates, the hardware, the belt, everything that mechanically puts this thing together, except for the extrusion, the spoiler board. So I know that the list of things that are not included is long, but this is the price you're going to have to pay if you want to try this out first. And we will warranty the parts. If you have trouble with the parts, I can replace them or whatever. But we just want to keep it very, very simple and make sure this isn't somebody that they don't own a 3D printer, don't own a CNC machine, and they want to get into it cheap. This isn't for you because there'll be some legwork, some elbow grease, some time, a learning curve involved in learning the software and electronics. But for me to be able to wash my hand of electronics and go ahead and experiment with the electronics that I've chosen until I am totally solid that the package that we put together for an all-in-one kit is really, really solid. The other nice thing about doing it yourself is, while it scares me a little bit, you will be able to choose the length of extrusion that you want to use. So you could build one of these with the plates and the hardware that I give you. You can choose, this is about a 16-inch by 16-inch build area, cut area. It's a little bit more than that, but that is not because I want it to be that. It's just what we could make with one stick of this double extrusion. So you might want to do 4 feet long, 4 feet wide. That's fine. But if you do that, the belt is going to get longer, so there won't be belts. So I'm going to put up a Bare Bones Beta kit, and I will make sure that I give a BOM of everything that's included and everything that you will need to source and buy. I will put links to some of those things because some of them are specific to this design, like the extrusion. Now, it's not that this wouldn't work with Mitsumi, it would, but some of the dimensions are going to be a little bit off. In other words, like if I just put Mitsumi on here, it might send this offset. Okay, I'm back. Having a little bit of internet trouble, I guess. Anyway, the Bare Bones kit beta that I'm going to put up will need you to source several things. So if you're not up for a project, don't order it. Okay, I'm not going to hold your hand. This is for the guys that want it cheap and want to get started with this, source their own stuff, make their own decisions. And so it'll reflect mainly on the mechanics that I've designed here, not necessarily the software or the electronics, that type of thing. So anyway, I'm going to put this in the store. We're going to do this tomorrow, Dave, and we'll give it a nice description, some pictures. We'll show you what you get. Make sure you understand it's a warranty on the parts that we're selling you, but it's pretty basic stuff. And you will be able to put this together with a few purchases from Amazon and whatnot, and you could have one of these sitting on your desk. So the price. The price of this Bare Bones kit will normally be $5.99, but we're going to put it on sale for $4.99. So basically, I've taken some of my margin and just handing it back to you. So $4.99. Realistically, I would say to get all the extras that I've been talking about, extrusion, belt, your motors and wires and electronics, and your router mount, because I've heard from some guys saying, well, I don't like the router that you chose. I want my own router. Well, that's fine. So you're on your own for your router mount and your router. But I think you're going to be around $1,000 for all in. But the reason I can hit that price is because I don't have to mark up anything that you buy yourself, see? So there you go. There is even a nice little project box that you could put your electronics in. I was looking at those on Amazon today. While we designed this, I really like it. When you do this custom in-house, and I put in a Raspberry Pi and a couple of fans and a nice power supply and like all this stuff. Again, choices that you may not make if you were left alone to make your own decision. But after all this upgrade, I mean, this box right here is probably $200, $100 for all the fabrication, and the electronics are at least another 100 or more. So yeah, this is probably adding $200 to the price, which gets up there, $400 after markup. So I just can't do it. I think it's better that you do it yourself. So anyway, if you're one of those guys or girls and you want to get in on this, look tomorrow. We'll put the product up at $4.99 on sale from $5.99 for the Bare Bones Beta. Printrbot CNC. Okay, that's enough on that. The only other thing that I want to say, two little bits of news. First of all, wish Dave a happy anniversary. It's Dave's anniversary today, so I want to make sure to get out of here quick so he can take his wife to dinner. But it's, what is it, 9 years? 9 years. Married today. Good job. Good choice, Dave. Good choice. Sarah is awesome. What was the other thing? I had a little slice of life. Oh, I tell you, my week started out kind of interesting. Yeah. So I'm not a big complainer, but I've been having some pain in my mouth recently. And so I went to the dentist a couple weeks ago, and he says, well, you're going to be fine after 2.5 root canals. So I got my first root canal on Monday, and boy, those are no fun at all. No fun at all. But it was weird. I was eating dinner that night, and like every bite I took was like, oh, this is awesome. I can chew on both sides. I don't have any pain. This is awesome. So anyway, while expensive and a pain in the butt, I'm about to be a healthier man after I get all these root canals done. So that was the beginning of my week. I did spend some time this weekend to do something that I've been meaning to do for a long time. This is the last thing I've got. So if you got questions, by the way, about the CNC or about whatever, ask them now because we're going to end very soon. But the Adopt-A-Bot has kind of been, I'll say, neglected a little bit. Now, we've been selling them. I kept threatening to take them out of the store to change. It'll be self-sourced and all this. And as I've fulfilled these orders that have come in, I've kind of realized that the approach I want to take on the Adopt-A-Bot is I've got lots of boards. They can be older boards that work with that bot, so I should probably keep selling those. So we put the boards that we have in stock. So there are some Rev D boards. How much are those, Dave? The Rev D boards are $35, so that's really cheap for a printer board. Now, it's not going to support the sensor, but some people don't want that. So we put those on sale, and I was like, well, that'll help Adopt-A-Bot. The F5s are there on sale, a little bit more. The F6s, a little bit more. We're about to receive our shipment from Ultimachine. They're making our electronics now, and I'm very excited to get a brand new F6 USB-B boards with the real strong USB connector. Those are on their way now, and the GT2 hubs that I needed are coming in. And very soon we'll get a G2 printer board shipment as well. So all those electronics are in stock. You choose what you want to choose for your printer if you're building one. The other thing I'm going to do is have a generic wiring kit that's available if you happen to be building your own rep wrap. And so I'll make the wires long enough, like if you were building, a Chinese Prusa or something, you're trying to do it on the cheap. Well, the electronics and wiring and motors and stuff that come with some of those kits are pretty lousy. And the Adopt-A-Bot, we need wires too. And so when I make my wiring kit, I'm going to make it compatible with my hot end. And I guess I could make that an option. But anyway, so I'm going to split up the things that I think would be helpful to sell to the Adopt-A-Bot folks and just list them there and say, hey, if you want to build one, buy a board, pick it. Buy a wiring kit, pick it. If you want motors, buy up motors. I have a couple of different kinds of motors that I could put on sale, but those are widely available on Amazon too, so it's just impossible to compete with China. So I may leave those motors to you to self-source, but the unique parts that we have here in stock and are easy to put together in an order and have it shipped to you, I'm going to do that. But then I started looking at the design, and several things about that first and second Adopt-A-Bot versions that I designed. One of them that was really bothering me as I was building that printer tank, which I have no comment on because it's kicked my butt this week. Really has. Gone round and round with that thing. But it will be done before Midwest Rep Festival, but it's not done right now. But anyway, so I was doing a lot of design, lots and lots of design this week. And it really bothered me that the Adopt-A-Bot doesn't have clamps to pinch the bars. You know, them being in there means you got to drill out something, which kind of stinks. And so with a clamp, it'll get real tight, and that bot becomes so much more rigid. So I've got Dave, he's started, they're not all done yet, but we're printing off the new design. So I have a new design, 1.3, that is it's pretty much finished. There might be a couple pieces I give some more attention to if when we put it together it doesn't work. But next week I hope to release the new version of Adopt-A-Bot with improved rigidity and a little different look. I wanted it to actually look different so that you could tell them apart, you know what I mean? So I took a little different tack, but it's very similar. But I really like the way that it's turning out. There were several things around the extruder that bugged me, so there's a new version coming out, and I've spent a lot of time on that. Again, we don't sell the printed parts, we give the files away. So it was just something that I got into, and so I look forward to that next week. And I do think that it will be easier to build once I get these parts finished. So that will be good. And that is pretty much it. We got the CNC Bare Bones beta coming up tomorrow for sale, $4.99, on sale for $5.99. And then Adopt-A-Bot files next week. What else? Any questions, Dave?
Yeah. Could you sell that electronics box separately?
This electronics box, the stuff that's in it, like let me tell you what's in it. There's a Raspberry Pi in it. You can buy that yourself. There's an e-stop in it here. You could also buy that yourself. It's on Amazon for like $8. The GT2 board is in here, and that will be for with the Legacy Shield. While we might be out of stock, are we out of stock on those? Yeah, I think we just went out of stock, but like I said, very, very soon, those will be back in stock. You can buy that. So if you like this box, I'll tell you what's actually better because this is so expensive. I got on Amazon.com and I did a search for electronics project box. The one that I like is actually a Radio Shack item. It's gray injection molded ABS. It's not quite this big, but it's close. And it has a metal top like this that just bolts onto the top. So obviously these are all being made in China, injection molded, and then they put a top on it. Sometimes also injection molded with just 4 bolts. Then you can just drill out holes for what you need to mount. So that's actually the tack that I'll probably end up taking, something that's much cheaper, because to manufacture this, I wanted what I wanted, you know, I always design what I want, and then I look at the price and I always regret it. Okay, not always. But in order to put my power supply in here, because you can order this power supply, it's hidden right now, but there's a power supply that we have that we actually do fabricate a metal box that goes on the end. It's a 12-volt power supply, and it has a metal piece that goes on the end to cover all the wiring, but it also includes an outlet like this to give you power, and the switch. So if you were to order a power supply, you would get something that looks like this but is much thinner. And then we added a fan because these motors do run a lot hotter than a NEMA 17. When you're powering these motors, they draw more amps. So we put a couple of fans in here. There's one on the power supply, of course, and there's one for the case. And there's an inlet for the air here. So all of that is what I wanted. Well, like I said, when you put a power supply inside, you got to put a mounting plate. So now we're at a standoff mounting plate, all custom mounting plate. So anyway, it's not financially feasible to sell these yet. I will find a finished solution that I think the route that I'm going to go is I'm just going to do one bare bones kit like I just described, and it'll be stripped of just everything that you might not want me to make your decision for you. But then there'll be an all-in kit that includes everything. I still think that the router, I mean, I can sell you the router, but I still think that some people are not going to want this router. There's just opinions when it comes to power tools. But I would envision an all-in kit with like the spoiler board, like everything. Like you literally don't have to go to the store. You put it together, even put some bits in there for you. But that, with all the extras, it's probably going to be around $1,500. I can get the extrusion for you and all of that at that price. It still leaves about a 40% margin for me. So anyway, so that'll have to wait because we want to start slow and make sure everything's working great and the design's good before I start to do a lot of these to bring the cost down and still make the money I need to make to sell these things. So will I sell this box? No, probably not. Any other questions?
You don't have time to be a beta owner. Do you have an idea of the time frame that you have to own it, which you sort of answered, but maybe it's not.
Excuse me. I don't like to let things lie. Once the design is done and we're testing with users on the beta, we will start using it every week, and we'll do projects every week. We want to eat our own dog food. Look that up if you don't know what that term means. It's a fantastic story. But we will use the machine and make sure that we like it, work out the bugs. So we need about a month before the all-in kit can come in. And we'll probably stock those at a fairly low volume first. So we're not going to order 1,000. We're not going to do that. We're going to make these in-house. We'll order the extrusion in-house. We'll have those cut to predetermined sizes. So at the same time this month, I want to make this kit into what looks like a crawl bot to make sure it works at that size. But I don't want to start selling the all-in kits. Everything's included. It won't be turnkey because you still have to build it. But I want to make sure everything is dialed in. We'll have tested the ball screws by then and the linear rails and get the last upgrade that I haven't yet tested. I have some of the parts, is the rack and pinion. The rack and pinion is what I want to use on the big crawlbot size. So there's a lot of work ahead, but I figured while I'm finishing all the details so that I can offer 6 different SKUs of this, the people that are ready to jump in and probably build a small one, we're ready to go with that now. So I wanted to release it now. And by the way, it'll go on sale tomorrow. I don't know. The files might be ready tomorrow. That's a possibility. But for sure, we'll have a lead time of at least a week. I think that's all we need is just a week because we don't have to source stuff. We're just fabricating. But I'd say about a week lead time. And so in that week, we'll finalize the files, and when we start shipping, we'll release the files. So they won't be for sale at the day we go on sale. They'll be released before we ship the first one. So if you want the files, that's when they'll be available. What else?
Updates to the Printrbot.com.
I'm waiting to hear back from my programmer. He is local here, but I emailed him. He has a day job. And I emailed him this morning, so I haven't heard back yet. And I left my phone at home all day, so I haven't even checked my email. But I'll find out soon. But it's become more and more and more clear to me that we absolutely have to have the cloud be able to let you change your tip size, your bed size, your starting G code. And that will open up. It also includes a firmware change that we'll have to change how it saves that starting G code. But with those changes, you'll be able to use that touchscreen with the GT, or I keep saying GT, with a Printrbot G2, the tiny G board. You'll be able to use that cloud with any printer, and you can get that nice UI if you want it. So those are the changes that I'm really, really hot on. I'm also working on, I don't think I have any. Can you throw me one of those cell phone cases? I've got a potential customer that wants to do cell phone cases. And so we've been printing a lot of cell phone cases. We're starting with a bumper. And so anyway, I've outfitted a bunch of simples, not a bunch, 5 or 6, with a 0.75 tip. And because I have the iPhone 7, is this the right one? Yeah. watch it break. That'd be awesome. Man, that's tight. And I don't mean cool. I mean, like, it really is. It's going to break my phone or something. I bet we resized that. Is there another one on there? Let me try that one. Anyway, but the reason I was thinking of it this morning is this guy wants to do some in-store demos. There we go. So really, really nice fit. This is actually just PLA. We usually test in PLA first. These right now we're printing these with a 0.75 tip on a simple Pro, and that means that you can't use the cloud, and that is really starting to bug me. When we get to, if these printers get placed in a mall, cell phone store or something, they're not going to want to upload a .gco file. They're going to want to see a picture of what the cell phone case will look like. They're going to want the slicer in the cloud to slice for the tip that they have, 0.75. So anyway, we did some modifications to the printer. We're testing the 24 volt. We haven't put it on there yet, but we got the high flow hot ends on there. So high flow hot ends, 0.75 tip. I want this cloud to work with any of my printers, and yes, we need to finish it, but it is not done yet. That's the only update I have. What else you got, Dave?
Kind of follow up to that.
Yeah.
You have plans to make it upload download faster.
Yes, so there's a couple of things that there's actually a post-process. I'm getting into nitty-gritty details here, and nobody really cares, but I'll tell you why one piece is slow. When we started with the Tiny G board, they had what's called G2 dialect. If you go to the G2 Core wiki, they talk about all this crazy language about a new way to talk to their firmware that kind of rolls in all of the known CNC code and then extends it for things like temperatures and extruders and stuff for 3D printers. Well, when we started, we had the cloud working, talking that G2 dialect, and it took this big post-processor on Cura 1.5 or 15 or whatever it is. And it was a big, long process. Well, we found out that some of that for the GCO files hasn't been removed. So if you're uploading a GCO file, there is a few seconds that is extra that we can just take out. And also, we have already updated the renderer for the thumbnail preview. So that is already loads faster. But there is still some slowness with the slicer. Now, we know that that can be fixed, but I wish I could explain to you how complicated this system is because we have such a proprietary set of electronics that, we're the first ones to use a Tiny G board in a 3D printer. So there was a lot of requirements that were on us to do the slicing. So yes, it can get faster. There's not only slowness that we think can be optimized in the cloud, but there's also slowness that we can do a better job of optimizing in the firmware itself. So the firmware has been recently up, well, the other day, Dave, I was loading, I was working on a new printer, and I went and logged in to the cloud and pulled it up, and it had the MAC address there. Have you seen that? There were some teachers that were asking, well, I've got an IT guy that requires the MAC address for the printer. How do I get that? Well, you could have just downloaded a free piece of software and got that yourself, but we have added that to the cloud so you can actually just see what your MAC address is for your printer. But it is actively being worked on. But again, this guy's a consultant in Germany. He has his own business. So in order for it to be inexpensive, right now I haven't hired a full-time programmer. But you have to live with slowness. So anyway, I know there's optimizations in the code. We're also, I think, at least a generation behind in the Teensy CPU. It's a little bit faster now. The reason I didn't jump on it, he was just finishing that. PJRC from the Teensy, he's the guy that wrote all the cool drivers for that touchscreen. And then we used parts of them to make that touchscreen really responsive. But anyway, he launched a Kickstarter right when we were getting the product out. And the things that he added were like audio. We don't use audio and stuff. So I've been waiting for a significant bump in CPU speed to rev that. But I'll tell you, now that, our cloud has had its problems, and every once in a while I see a bug in our printer. You just turn it off, turn it back But I got to tell you, living with a printer with a touch screen and living with a cloud that you don't have to think about what the slice is going to be, you just throw the STL at it, that has really spoiled me. I mean, I love it. So I will continue to build printers that have touch screens and include an optional cloud. So I'm not giving up on it. That I know. I'm anxious to see Bill from Polar 3D. He has been, I don't know if he's watching, but he's been threatening to change the firmware on the ESP8622, the Wi-Fi chip. And he said, oh, I'm going to change that so it can talk to our cloud. And I said, hey, go for it, dude. Open source. That's what it's all about. There may be some people that are just like, really like that Polar 3D cloud and could use our printers with that if he does get that finished and releases the firmware so we could update the boards with it. So anyway, the cloud is not dead. It's just a little slow. And I do know that we have, I think there must be a bandwidth cap, or when you use Amazon services, sometimes it can slow down if you've got a heavy load. So I have noticed that sometimes the slicing will bog down if there's a lot of people using. So that might explain some of it. Any other questions?
Ever thought about creating a laser configurator?
Yeah, I mean, I have. Every time I post something, I've actually got a here's a terrible story. So I was reading a 3dprint.com article about a new, excuse me, a new diode laser that has achieved an even higher wattage than anybody else has before. And so I was like, oh, I've been waiting for those diode lasers to get more powerful. And I think it was a 3 watt, or it might have even been 5 watt laser. And when you get up into that wattage, it's slow, but you can actually cut through 1/4-inch birch plywood with one pass. And that's what I do. I use 1/4-inch birch plywood. And so I thought, oh, I got to buy that. So I contacted the guy. He responded right away. It was weird because it was like a U.S. address, but then he said he was in Russia. And so I was like, okay. And he's like, yes, we're ready to ship your order. Let's talk on the phone right now. I was like, wait a minute. Why do you want to talk to me on the phone? Maybe he Googled me or something. But I got a little bit like, what's going on? Anyway, I bought it. It was like $300. And it came in, and I'm not even going to tell you what the brand is, but it came in, and I could not believe the poor craftsmanship on that. It was literally like he took a bar of aluminum and just cut off slices of it with a hacksaw and like bolted it on to this diode to cool it more. Oh, it was horrible. I haven't even taken it out of the box because I just looked in it. I did take it out and I put it back in, and I was like, ugh, that was a waste of $300. But when I posted that I was interested in that, I ordered that. Hey, I ordered a diode. I'm going to try to put it on my printer. Man, did I get the social media. They were not happy that I was going to endorse putting a laser on a printer. There are some people that are very, very, very safety conscious, and I applaud them for their safety consciousness. I am not safety conscious at all. That's why I have scars all over my head and face. I don't, I'm an R&D shop here, and so I'll try all kinds of crazy things. I really don't recommend you putting a laser on anything that doesn't have an enclosure and to shield your eyes. Because if you had those glasses that come with the lasers, and you took them off and you're doing something, and you come over here and you look, well, you could actually go partially or totally blind if you get enough exposure to that laser. So that kind of legal, risk, that if I were to sell a kit for a laser to bolt on your printer, I just will never do it, because there's very strict laws when it comes to exposure to lasers. You have to have interlocks, which means it has to be fully enclosed, has to be evacuated of air if you're a manufacturer. You have to, when you close it, it has to totally turn off the laser with 2 interlocks. In other words, 2 switches that say, I'm closed. No, I'm really closed. And then it won't let you see it. So when I go to my laser cutter, it's a Chinese one. Or no, it's FS Laser, which is Chinese, rebadged in Las Vegas. You open it and it turns off the laser. Well, that's safety. But anyway, so the expectations of how good those diode lasers can perform are wildly overblown online. And so they're just not up to what a CO2 laser is. And so if you're wanting to tinker with lasers, I highly recommend you go in with your eyes wide open and either do one of two things. If you want to get something for the cheapest, get on eBay and search the forums first, but buy one of those Chinese, really ugly blue and black boxes that are 45-watt lasers, and there's all kinds of upgrades you can do to them, but it's a lot of work. Lightobjects.com, I think. They're actually local. They're in Sacramento, and I've gone and been in their facility. They have some decent kits, but buy premium mirrors, buy premium lenses. They're not that much more. Do the upgrades. There's a whole community of people that take those 45-watt Chinese lasers, and I think they're like $500 or less even. And there's a couple $100 of upgrades, maybe $300 of upgrades that you can do, and you can get a really nice functioning unit. A lot of people put the Tiny G board in there actually because it's really good with motion control. So the boards that come with it is like throw it away. So anyway, but when you get up into buying something that's for the maker market, you got a couple of options. One that's not even for sale yet, but they have announced. One is Glowforge, and Carl Ubis, the guy that does all of our hot ends, he actually ordered on the Kickstarter the Glowforge. And we had our doubts, but I have to tell you that he loves it. He loves his laser cutter. Now, Carl's in a shop. He has, he doesn't have to worry about, like, there's videos of using your laser. By the way, that Glowforge is like this big. It's huge. It's like this big. It's very large. It's bigger than this. And it's like this big thing. And they show it in the videos where like a mom is engraving a cupcake or cookie with her daughter in the kitchen. You're not going to use it like that. If you're going to cut plywood, you need it in your garage. You need like a big fan on it. So anyway, but buy something that's finished, and that is a finished product. It is somewhat expensive, but buy that. Or wait for Dremel this summer, or a couple months here. They basically took the spec sheet for the Glowforge, and they said, yeah, that looks like a good market. I know some guys that invested in that. They're very excited, so we're going to completely do the same thing. And so the Dremel Dream Builder laser something or other, it was actually an article or an ad in the most recent Make magazine. So Dremel is doing a laser cutter. If you're going to Maker Faire this summer here in the Bay, you'll see it. It looks very nice. I'm sure it's going to be cheaper than Glowforge, but it looks nice. The Glowforge I had enough problems with. I was like, I have big laser cutters. Why would I need that? I might consider the Dremel. I might, because it's a bigger company. They did a pretty good job with their 3D printer for their first round. They got a lot better in the second. But anyway, so check that out. But laser on a 3D printer, I don't really advise it. If you're going to do it, you're on your own. You're on your own. I don't want to fire or blind people. Is that it?
We can do one more if you like.
Sure.
Just a few questions about, can you bring back possibly a 2.0 version? So there's been some comments.
Oh, the play?
Yeah, so some of the conversation has been, well, there's just not enough margin for us to do the play as we had it.
Right.
Do you have any ideas?
That's a great question. Did you know that I was working on that? Oh. Well, that's a great question. So the question was, can you bring back the play, please? And I said, well, no, not like it was, because there wasn't enough margin in it. I have been, actually, I'm not under NDA on any of this, but I'll tell you, there was an article that came out where a guy got a grant to do some work with genetic testing and testing for disease. So it was like a scientific instrument. He took a Printrbot play, and he kind of changed the tool head, and he did all this stuff. And it actually was in an article that NASA released, or they released about NASA's program that he got the grant from. And so anyway, he used the play, and I said, well, why did he use the play? You can find it online, by the way. It made the rounds a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. I'm looking at a play right now, in fact. I have one on my desk. Because he said, well, I need some changes made to the play if we're going to use it for this scientific genetic testing. He wants to do, well, ultimately he wants to put it in space, which would be hilarious. Because in space with no gravity, it's harder to do these tests for testing for disease. You have to agitate liquid, and how are you going to do that in space and not in vacuum, but no gravity, not anti-gravity, no gravity. So anyway, he said, you know, it's small, it's very sturdy. He remembered when I did my first print on it, Brian filmed me standing on it. You know, it's very, very sturdy. And a lot of the cheaper, you know, the stuff you can get on Amazon, Prusa, you wouldn't want to stand on those. Even Tom, when he did the review of it, stood on top of it. So he liked that it was small. He liked that it was cheap. He liked that it was very, very sturdy. He wants to drop it out of a drop tower. I forget how tall it is, but they have these towers at NASA or some places that test equipment for NASA. And for like 3 seconds, 2 or 3 seconds, it goes through very low gravity. You know, when you're falling, you feel weightless. So they're going to take the play that I build for them and drop it and see what happens when it hits the ground, but they'll be able to do their little test while it's dropping for 2 seconds and get some data. So anyway, I was kind of reminiscing about that bot, and in fact, I recently saw a couple that were returned somehow out there. So there's been some plays around in my line of sight. So I put one on my desk and I opened up the files, and I remember, so Brian, when he was still here doing engineering, one of the last things he did, I said, you know what, it's just so, because I built some plays and it was just so hard to build. It would have never really worked as a kit. Did we ever do a kit? We did a kit, but it was fairly finicky. But a couple of problems. I got big hands, and to get in there to do some of the things to the play, there's not a lot of room because it's so small. But also, Brian did such a good job of economizing all of the room available in there to get everything tight and small. So everything's packed in very tightly. I just was frustrated. I said, we've got to do something different. If we do another version of the play, it needs to be less parts and easier to service. Even the guys that were fixing them and building them on the line were complaining because they were like me, big hands, small places. So anyway, he did a version of the play that was a little bit simpler, and I liked part of it, didn't like others. So he ended up leaving, and then Steve was doing some design for me for quite some time, and that's what we thought we were going to do next. After the Simple Pro, we thought we were going to just rev the play and rev the plus. So we started working on the play. When I opened up Fusion 360 and did a search for play, there were probably half a dozen different designs that we took all the way to completion. We built them, and I just sat there. There was always things about it that bothered me, and I just can't release a product without really feeling good about it. So for a couple of weeks now, I've been noodling on a version of the play. By the way, yes, I could sell the play again at a different price. I could do that. But there's actually things in there that I don't want to continue doing. So I've got a version of the play opened. I worked on it last night even. And it's the desire for me is to have something that's reminiscent of the play, maybe not exactly the same. It'll have to have a bigger build volume. Everybody complains about the build volume of the play. I mean, pretty much everybody. It's just not big enough. So I think I can squeeze out some more room in a case of similar size. But it needs to be simpler. And I do want to include a couple of linear rails. When you use linear rails and carriages, you know, you've got a linear rail that you bolt to the piece of metal, and then you got a carriage that you can bolt stuff to. So you got two parts. If you use round rods and bearings, man, it adds up fast. You got the bars, the bearings, the clamps, the screws to clamp it. It's an awkward geometry where you got to either put slots in a flat rail, you got to do something with a PEM cert in the back. It just gets really complicated. And it's not actually that rigid. It's probably rigid enough. But the reason that that play is so small is it only has one Z. I remember Tom in his review, he was like, I don't know about this. You only got one lead screw on one side. What's up? It worked because it was only about that long. So I've opened that up, and I am working on it. I'm not going to make any promises, but I will tell you that I will be building a play that is inside the current play case. Just I pretty much stripped out all the innards. He has requirements that I don't want to go into, but it's different. So I will be building a new version of the Play very soon, probably next week, to take a good look at if that has any value to continue with that model. So I haven't given up on it, but I would be curious, share with me on Twitter or something why you want it back. Is it the size? Is it the price? Because if it's the price, you may not like it at $400 or $500. It would be a little bigger build volume, but so anyway. And the other thing about that design is the same design would work for a larger printer or a taller printer. So no longer am I building printers and then starting with a blank sheet of paper and building a completely different printer with all different parts and then doing a third with all different parts. The Play, the Simple, and the Plus, they shared almost no parts, like none, okay? So I just had different design constraints, and you ended up with too many parts and too high cost. So if I do another, I will be doing another printer. I'm thinking it'll be a box, likely with a dropping Z, but maybe not. But that box, you can upgrade it, at least in one direction. And it's all the same parts. Like, I don't know why I was doing it so complicated before. But yeah, I'm already working on new printers, but it'll take a while. I'm thinking I'd like to release something in the summer. So that's the plan. All right, I think that's enough. Dave's got a dinner to have and a class to teach and stuff. So it's been good to see you guys. Look, tomorrow, I would say, I'm slow. So by the end of the workday tomorrow, you should see the Barebones Beta CNC for sale. And next week, Adoptabot files and other stuff. But we'll see you next week. Take care.